everyone, welcome back. So I've been really looking forward to this moment, Q&A interview. So again, we're very lucky to have Luke, the leader, very active leader of SLA, and I have a lot of questions that I think everybody must be interested in. So Luke, let's start off with this question. So what made you decide to become a researcher, and why did you decide to study linguistics and obtain the PhD? Because obviously there's so many topics that you could have pursued, as a young graduate student. Why did you specifically choose the linguistic/applied linguistics?
Great question. For me, it came from sort of my development as a language learner to then becoming a language teacher. And I think that's probably the case for a lot of us in applied linguistics and SLA. A lot of us came to it through language teaching. And then I very conveniently, for me, I think I was taking courses on language teaching and on intro to SLA. While I was learning to be a teacher, while I was starting to be a teacher. I used to teach Spanish and English, and I was I guess I started to have questions. I started to have curiosity, and when I learned about SLA as a field of inquiry whose goal is to understand language development, I thought, wow, this is great. I can get involved in research that will help inform the things that happen in the classroom and other places as well. But I sort of got excited, and then about the possibility to contribute to that literature. And then I found myself, I found that I kind of had like a buzz. I felt like a buzz when I was involved in research. And so that to me really appealed. I felt like very much at home, and the idea of systematically collecting data and analyzing the data, and to use that data to find answers to the questions that we all have was very much appealing to me. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Oh, wow. Okay, very good. So now I'm actually also wondering about how you got into the topic of research, methodological reform and innovation in the field of SLA, especially during your PhD. What was the moment when you sort of came up with this idea and you made it for your PhD dissertation topic?
Yeah. It was kind of like, I guess I was interested in a substantive topic initially, and I still am interested in the effectiveness of strategy instruction, because I saw that as a way to help. I was like, oh wow, strategy instruction, we can help make learners better learners and help them be more autonomous learners and that kind of thing. That was appealing to me. And that led me to conduct a meta-analysis of the effectiveness of strategy instruction, right? As a way to understand that domain. I thought, okay, let me meta-analyze it. And then in carrying out that project, that meta-analysis, I realized as I started, developing my coding scheme to code the primary studies, I started thinking about more and more methodological features in that body of research that might matter, that might have an effect also, or be at least associated with the outcomes of the studies.
Right.
There's a great quote, something like effect sizes are not magically independent of the methods used to create them, or something like that. And I think it's Vacha, maybe 2004. But anyway, I got sort of interested in this idea of, well, the methods really matter. Methods matter. It's not just what we study, but it's how we study it that really matters. And we want to advance a particular domain like SLA. We have to do good research. And so then I started applying these meta-analytic techniques to understanding methods, so systematically examining methods in a given domain. And so Sue Gass and I did a study looking at research methods, essentially a methodological synthesis, looking at research interactionist tradition of SLA. And so from there, and then I decided I want to do something similar for my dissertation study to look systematically at research and reporting practices. So design issues, analytical issues, and reporting practices or transparency in a body of quantitative L2 research.
Oh, I see.
And that's kind of the path that led me there.
Well, that's quite interesting. So you initially worked on a strategy instruction and the like variables. Then gradually, slowly, you became more and more interested in like research synthesis itself. Then realizing the potential of it, especially in a even broader field of second language acquisition.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so
Okay.
you get analysis as a lens to understand. So when I'm involved in synthetic projects or methodological synthesis projects, what I'm often trying to do is it's there's like kind of three main goals. It's describe this domain, describe the methods, the research methods, reporting practices, the quality, transparency. So describe it, sometimes in ways that are not associated with quality. Just what are we doing in terms of the types of measurements we use or the types of designs we use? Evaluate it, because some of the features of the studies are related to quality. So describe it, evaluate it, and then not just look backwards, but then also look forwards to sort of use that information to provide empirically grounded recommendations for future studies.
I see. So feedback to the like researchers who are actually doing primary studies. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I see. So I'm just wondering though, as of 2021, so you have been obviously working a lot on this topic and theoretical innovation in it. So how have you viewed the progress in the field, especially after 2014? You published that landmark paper in language learning. Like, do you think the field also has been incorporating advice from methodological papers and growing, evolving?
Yeah, for sure. Oh my goodness, I've seen so many cool things happen.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean that's like a whole separate conversation on all the different things that have been, all the developments and the advancements that are happening. We've seen people introducing whole new statistical models and techniques. You yourself would have been involved in these. I mean, you've been using Bayesian techniques recently, which nobody ever heard of in applied linguistics until recently. So these new techniques been introduced, but we've also seen like mixed effects modeling and Bayesian techniques. I saw a paper just recently using integrative data analysis, and so all these new techniques. But we've also seen sort of reconsideration of familiar techniques, which has been really great to see as well. We've seen people push towards open science, and you as well are a leader in that area.
Thank you.
I mean, not just talking about it, but actually doing it. Making our materials open, making our data available. A lot of people also engaging in study pre-registration. That's becoming more common. We've seen dedicated conferences, dedicated special issues, books on research methods. We've seen, lots and lots of workshops. We have at my home university, Northern Arizona University, we have a stats club.
I didn't know about that. Really, stats club.
Yeah, I guess it's a stats club. Maybe I should call it a methods club, a research methods club.
Right. Yeah.
I would love it if you could come out, because sometimes it's called Coffee and Phone Bar, and about once a month. And actually, our friends at Michigan State have a club as well called Donuts and Distributions.
Donuts and Distributions. Oh, I see. Wow.
So all the move towards more highly valuing and prioritizing replication research, new journal standards and guidelines. I mean, there's just been so many exciting things happening, both kind of from the top down, like editors and from that sort, and graduate programs, but also sort of individual researchers getting excited about doing better methods and taking workshops and teaching classes. And so we've seen it coming from all sides, and it's been great. It's been great.
Right. Yeah. And then hasn't your journal recently introduced a new section where basically researchers can talk about the new methodologies or?
Yeah, so studies in second language acquisition, we have now a dedicated article, a designation for what's called the SSLA Methods Forum, for discussion of methodological issues, introduction of new techniques, papers focused on methods. Language learning also has a dedicated methods section called Methods, I can't remember. Sorry.
But that's a good evidence, right? So even you don't remember the comment sections, like these top channels I actually have incorporated for people to talk about methodology. And yeah,
there's dedicated journal space now to methodological discussions, which we have never had before.
Right, and obviously, if you want to talk about methodology more casually, then you can come to Luke's. You are a Facebook page, and now it has like 18,000 people. So I also think that it's a very new culture for me, because SLA used to just talk about the just topics like themselves, like like what kind of instruction is better, or like what kind of learners likely successful or whatever, but. Probably after you came out in this field, people have begun to talk a lot about then methodology and then how, so not only just about topics themselves, but how we can approach these topics. And to me, this is a really, really big contribution that you have made to this field, and we have been truly enjoying, I think.
Yeah, it's great to see it. I see a really true interest in not just the substance or the what, but people who really want to do better. They want to learn more about the how. Right. It's really exciting to see.
So in your view though, do you think the same sort of like a history or evolution has been happening in other fields of like social sciences, like for example psychology?
There are a number of sort of related movements happening. So like psychology has been talking about for the last 10 years, kind of this crisis of confidence, application crisis. In many ways, though, I think that applied linguistics is still behind our colleagues in other social sciences in terms of our methodological development. Part of the reason for that is training. I mean, so in psychology departments, undergrads take 2 or 3 classes in research design and instrument and methods and stats, and sometimes in psychometrics. In our field, we don't have so much of an undergraduate tradition of methodological training. And so when our students come in as master's students or PhD students, they've usually never taken a single class in research methods.
That's true.
So it puts us a little bit behind, and it's just not part of the culture. It hasn't been traditionally part of our culture as much.
That's true.
But that may be changing, but we're still a little bit behind. But that's okay. We're also a younger field.
That's true.
So we're working on it.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, actually, that is actually leading us to the next question very beautifully. So, the SLA is relatively young field, and so basically, 70s and 80s, so the field that kind of like started, and then since then has been growing exponentially. And probably around the 70s, 80s, Michael Long, Susan Guest, these founding scholars were talking about, let's say, future of SLA at that time. But then now, 2021, and Luke, again, as a leader of this field, I consider, at this moment, 2021, what do you think of the future of the field of SLA? It's going to be completely, your personal view, but I'm very curious to hear about your thoughts on that.
It's a fun question to think about. Where are we headed over the next few decades? I like to think. I mean, I hope that we continue to focus more on research methods. I mean, of course, that's probably my own bias and interest, because I would like to see that happening. But I think that may happen. I think it'd be nice to see. It would be great to see. I'm going to kind of talk about what I expect, but also kind of what I hope.
Please.
Expect and maybe hope that we expand to be more of a little bit more of a mainstream department. Part of the problem with our field is that we're just off the radar. I mean, the other disciplines, our colleagues in other very, very close by disciplines often don't know that we exist. And I blame, I think to some extent we're to blame. We have done a really good job of borrowing, and I'm not the first. Other people have talked about this. This idea that we borrow from our colleagues. We borrow in terms of theory. We borrow in terms of methods. Right. From our colleagues in psychology or education, linguistics. and we borrow in terms of the statistical techniques that they use and things like that. We haven't yet done a good job of making ourselves relevant to those departments or to those fields. And so I'd like to see us over the next few years kind of come out of our shell and to be able to actually give back something to our colleagues in other disciplines.
That's a really good point, Luke. I see. So we have been borrowing a lot of ideas and methodologies from the neighbor fields, and especially our mentor is always psychology,
sociology, of
that's
course,
true.
Education. Yeah,
I see. But science. I see. Then what you're saying is that then in the future we are finally going to sort of feed back to them.
So we need to do work that addresses topics that are relevant to the world, to other scholars, but to practitioners. But then we also need to do good research, because other fields. There's a great quote from Gass et al. 1998 or something like that, where they say something like, respect for the field of SLA can only come through sound scientific progress. And so we need to not just do research that's relevant to the rest of the world, but we need to do research that's good, that's strong and rigorous and of high quality. Otherwise, nobody's going to take our work seriously.
That's really true. In order to actually make this sort of bridge between us and these neighboring fields, and it is really actually our responsibility to make our research methodology rigorous, so that they will read and they will actually understand, okay, this is a good research and we can learn from them. That's really interesting and obviously very inspiring advice for us. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you, Luke. Yeah. Well, actually, yeah, Luke, especially for this video, a lot of my students are watching, and as I said earlier, a lot of young graduate students all over the world. So for them, though, obviously the crucial thing is how to find a good research topic for dissertation, either at the MA or obviously at the PhD level. Yeah, if you can, give some kind of advice, and then
That's a really good question. Well, first of all, try to work with Kazuya. That would be my number one suggestion.
Thank you for mentioning that.
If you're looking for, do whatever Kazuya tells you to do, but if that doesn't work,
thank you.
I think the things to do are things like, read widely, read lots of research, and see what gives you that kind of buzz, what gives you that kind of excitement, what papers or articles or topics read, and you just want to consume it and take more and more in, and you want to learn more about it. And so that's that's a good area that's a good indicator that you're heading in the right direction. And then from there, also read widely and talk to people, go to conferences, go find out what people are talking about right now, because of course, there's that kind of lag time. By the time you read an article, the research was probably carried out, a year or 2 or 3 years ago. And so to stay really, really current, I would recommend, trying to go to conferences and seeing what people are talking about right now. And that's also a great way, of course, to meet people and to find out what kinds of communities or cultures might exist within the field that you could then maybe be part of, and where you might feel like you would belong and fit in. And so those are a few strategies I might apply.
I see. So, for example, in my institutes, basically students have, I'm talking about MA students, but they typically have 4 months or so to, first of all, read and find the topic, and then actually obviously collect the data and analyze and write up a paper. So it's quite a sort of intensive process. And I think this type of a framework and structure is quite common, especially in the UK. Yeah. So that's the reason why this week, actually, we just had a sort of workshop for MA students, and everyone was just so passionate talking about how to find a good topic. Yeah. So for these kinds of students, do you have any sort of a quick advice?
Because there's not time to read really widely. But in that case, I'll add to the list of suggestions. look at the ends of papers. When you see, go to the ends of papers and look at their suggestions for future research. But also look at the limitations. I mean, a limitation section to me is whether or not the author talks about it as such. A limitation section is a section for future research, because each limitation can then be addressed in a future study. You're a master at this, Kazuya, I know.
Thank you.
Your work, but it's a delicate art. But also talking to people, talking to experts, talking to Kazuya. I'm finding out the people who are doing current research. What needs to be done? What's a topic right now that maybe somebody like Kazuya would say, hey, listen, here's a paper that I want to do right now, but I just don't have time because I'm doing 14 others, and so that
I see.
Or I would also really, really highly recommend a great way to sort of, if you're sort of new to research, is to do a replication study. And
that's a really good topic. Yeah.
You sort of have a template. When you do a replication study, you have a template of an existing study that then you can sort of adopt and then modify a little bit to your setting, and you don't have to invent everything from scratch. So check out Graham Court and Kevin McManus just published a book, 2019, I believe, on sort of tutorial on how to do replication research. So I recommend people check that out.
I can feel that in the field of SLA, that a lot of a growing amount of recognition has been given to that replication, right?
Yeah. A step in the right direction.
Oh, I see. And how about the iris that you're organizing?
Yeah, sure. So that you can also find lots of materials on there. And so again, you don't have to reinvent the wheel to do research. In fact, you in many cases probably shouldn't create a brand new instrument. It's a really wise idea to build on what, science is always cumulative, and we're always building on top of each other.
I see.
That's kind of the way it works. And so I'd recommend going there to check out, you can search the IRIS database for materials, to then data collection materials especially, but other types of tools and materials as well.
Okay, I think the next is going to be the last question, but I think this deserves the title last question. So because we're so lucky to have Luke, associate editor and editor of several journals, and you have had a lot of experience on this as well as an author. So everyone, and we are very curious to hear from you. What kind of advice you would give to professionals who are eager to publish in international journals? What would be your tips? I know it's very difficult to talk about tips per se, but just sort of casual, informal sort of advice. What kind of advice would you give to the young professionals?
Yeah, good question. One thing is, be really careful. You got to really know your journal really well. Know that the journal that you're targeting. So sometimes we see submissions to SSLA, for example, that and that are not referring to research that's relevant to SSLA. And so you want to make sure that you're targeting the right journal. You want to make sure that your paper is current, is a topic that's of interest right now. You want to make sure, of course, that it's a really, really high methodological quality. That can be really difficult. But one other piece of advice I would give, maybe you could edit out some of my other stuff, but one other piece of advice I have would be, don't sit on your work. Just get it out the door. Make it as good as you can. But one problem I see, especially with junior scholars, is that they get the paper to it's 90%, 95% done, and then they just stop. But to some extent, you have to at some point just say it's close enough, and I have to just submit it. And then if you don't submit it, it can't be submitted. It can't be considered for publication. Kazuya, you're a master at this, at getting papers done. And then the expression I use is out the door. So you have to get it out the door. Otherwise, nothing's ever going to happen with it.
Actually, I definitely remember, you saying, "I'm so happy that finally I got this get out of the door." So that. That's I remember that quote actually. Yeah, thank you. I see. So obviously it's important to think a lot about each submission and paper, but at the very same time, at certain points, you want to get this out of the door. I see. See how the reviewers and audience will react, and probably based on them, you're going to even revise further. But at certain points, you have to get it out.
Yeah, just get it out. So people who I've a lot of, when I work with PhD students or I teach a seminar, sometimes I'll follow up with the students a year later and say, hey, what's the status of this paper? And I know that maybe the paper was 95% done a year ago and just needs that final push. It's like, I just want to encourage people, you can do it. Right. You can just sit down with a paper, give it 2 solid days or whatever you need to give it until you can put it out the door and just get it out. So I hate to see, to me, it's actually, to some extent, it's actually an ethical issue. If you do good research and it's your ethical responsibility to share that with the community. We need to know what you did.
Wow, okay. It's an ethical issue. Once you do very good research, it's your responsibility to make it out there.
Yes, because if you did a good study and that study has the potential to inform theory, inform practice, inform future research, this applied linguistics community that you're part of, we're all dependent on each other to share our findings through publication. And so if you do a good study, you need to share with everybody else. That's how things move forward. And if you don't do that, you're sort of withholding back something valuable to the community.
That's actually a very beautiful way of pushing students, and this is so-called final push, but it's a very good way to do that, because you do have the responsibility to share kind of as soon as possible because you've done it already.
And it may not be, it may be especially timely right now, but it may not be as timely if you wait 2 years.
Luke, actually, yeah. I like that. Get this out of the door as soon as possible. I actually, throughout this sort of YouTube lecture series, I have definitely learned that it's also very important to have a supervisor like you. Definitely, because this would make a huge influence in my view, because basically professors who are very active in publication research, then they know the sort of a vibe, they know the sort of the way how it should go. And I really like that you're saying it's even ethical issue, you have done it already. So no matter what, you should definitely put yourself and get this out of door and see how it goes. And the publication is in the end very, very important sort of step, and obviously it matters for everyone's CB, but from the point of the researchers,
knowledge construction, sort of developing knowledge. It's true. But I think you make a good point also about the importance of the advisor. If people are out there and they're looking for a program to join, to be a part of, to do their PhD, you somebody that you like, that you can get along with, but also is going to model, that's going to sort of bring you into their process, and your process and my process, because we both try to be active.
Right. I think we're very similar in that way. The speed. And
there are different ways of being a scholar, though.
Of course.
And so I try to make sure the people that I work with, they know that this is the way I work. That this is just the way I work, and it's not the right way. It's not the best way, but it's just the way that I like to work. And so, similar to you, I like to have lots of different projects happening at the same time. You're the same. You usually, you have maybe you're collecting data on 5 different projects. You're analyzing data on 5 different projects, and you're writing 5 different projects, and all at the same time. And that's your style, where some people might just do, one study until it's done, and then they submit it, and until it's done, and that's okay too. There are different ways of.
Definitely.
Maybe people need to find a mentor that can work with their style, whose style they can work with, I guess.
But I must say though, thinking of let's say students are looking for their supervisor, especially for the purpose of PhD, and to me, like it's really important to have a supervisor like you, or like somebody that you want to follow as a role model. Like for example, yeah, some PhD students are definitely so passionate and want to publish, and then in that case, it's good to find a supervisor like you, so that you can work together. You can definitely follow that speed and feel the speed. So that's really good one. And thank you so much, Luke. Yeah, I think this interview has, this is pretty good and inspiring to a lot of people, and even including myself. This is a really great conversation, and hopefully,
I'll get to talk to you.
Yeah, and hopefully we can continue this, and hopefully in the future, again, Luke, could I invite you again to give another lecture?
Anytime, because any chance to get together with you, I will take it. Yeah. I love anytime we can meet up and chat. I love it. So of course.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah,
my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and this is so much fun to talk with you, because you always. Thank you.
Thank you,
everybody, for watching. Yeah.
Thank you. In my view, the field of vocabulary teaching and acquisition can be defined as pre- and post-Professor Webb era.
It's exciting to be here. Now, I'm going to talk about second language learning through watching television.
What made you decide to become a researcher?
Now, I think my answer to this question is probably going to be different. So it wasn't, about my love of language. It was about... When I started my PhD, I did my PhD with pollination. It really developed my interest in research. And coming out of that, I thought, well, yeah, I would like to be a researcher.
Why is it important to publish in your journal?
In the top research journals, publication standards for the methodology, the results, they have to be transparent, they have to be replicable. These are positive features of those journals.
To me, the field has grown so exponentially. What kind of topics will continue to grow? What will be the future of L2 vocabulary research? Let's say in 10 years, 20 years.